I really enjoyed the nostalgia trip that I got from making those 2015 throwback videos, and this time I want to take things back even further by revisiting some of the most influential electronic songs from 1992 to 2012. We'll start things off with an all-time classic, Rhythm is a Dancer by Snap, which was released in 1992. Next up is 2 Unlimited's 1992 album, Get Ready. This album has 2 enormous stadium anthems, Get Ready and Twilight Zone. I definitely have a soft spot for early electronic music that gets used a lot at sporting events because that's actually how I was first exposed to electronic music, with these 2 tracks being a part of that. Alright, now we're gonna jump ahead to 1997 for the Chemical Brothers track Block Rockin' Beats. The energy and drums in this track are insane, and it has made this song a timeless classic. I don't really remember how I first heard this song, but I'm pretty sure that it was in a video game like Dance Dance Revolution or something like that. In 1998, Cher's biggest track of all time was born, called Believe.
Do you believe in life after love?
This track definitely deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of 90s dance music, no doubt. Also, South Park has an episode making fun of this song, and it's hilarious.
This is what we did in Waco. Play really bad music really loud until it drives them nuts and makes them want to come out. Nobody can stand this much Cher. This is her new album. If this doesn't drive them out, nothing will.
That's great music, Mr. Mackey. What is that?
Oh, this is Cher. This is her new album.
Well, hell, turn it up.
Another big track in 1998 was Fatboy Slim's track Right Here, Right Now, which has had a huge impact on the modern EDM scene, as the vocals from that track are frequently sampled. In 1999, Moby released his album called Play, which has 2 tracks that skyrocketed, Porcelain and Flower.
This is good.
I'm pretty sure that Flower got used in one of the Fast and Furious movies in the mid-2000s, and I personally still listen to both of those tracks at least a few times a year. Bringing it back to more stadium anthems, in 1999, Zombie Nation released Kerncraft 400, which has become one of the biggest stadium anthems of all time. This was also one of the earliest dance tracks that I ever heard. One year later in 2000, possibly the #1 stadium anthem of all time was born, Sandstorm by Darude. This song is basically its own meme now, but it is undeniable how big this song was in the 2000s, and it has been one of the most used pre-kickoff songs in college football to this day. In 2001, Daft Punk released their Discovery album, which in my opinion is the best Daft Punk album. This album has so many hits like Face to Face, Veritas Quo, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, Digital Love, Aerodynamic, and of course, One More Time. Also, fun fact, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger was how I personally discovered Daft Punk, but I didn't know their name or the song name for years. I used to play this Flash game way back in the day called Kitten Cannon, and Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger would play on the menu screen, so I would pull up that game just to listen to the song, but I didn't find out what it actually was until Kanye West released Stronger, which samples Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and they mentioned that on the radio, which blew my mind because I finally knew who made that song, and from there I dove headfirst into Daft Punk. We can't move on to 2002 just yet without mentioning DJ Sammy's track Heaven, which was also released in 2001. In my mind, this song definitely exists in the same category as Believe by Cher, and it's for sure an all-time classic. And speaking of all-time classics, that brings us to Benny Benassi's 2002 track Satisfaction. Jumping to 2004, Eric Prydz released Call on Me, which he actually made as a joke, but the song ended up becoming huge. He played it live a few times the first 2 years after it was released, but then he didn't play it for 20 years, but he did recently break that streak at a show in Austin, Texas. In 2005, another classic Daft Punk album was released, Human After All. There are so many good songs on this album, but the frontrunners are definitely Robot Rock and Technologic. Bringing it back to the Chemical Brothers, they put out another massive track in 2005, Galvanize. This track has remained culturally relevant since its release, and it still gets used in commercials to this day. This is also one of the earlier dance tracks that I was introduced to.
Don't hold back, 'cause you woke up in the morning with initiative to move, so I make it harder.
In 2006, Tiesto released Adagio for Strings, which is another all-time classic. That same year, Pretty Lights released their debut album, Taking Up Your Precious Time, which had their first big hit, Finally Moving. One interesting thing about this album is that Pretty Lights was actually a duo when this was released, as Michael Minert was an original member of Pretty Lights, and now he's back to touring with the band. This song is also really personal to me because Finally Moving was how I discovered Pretty Lights, but I actually found it through Chris Webby's mixtape called The Underclassmen, where he had a song called Finally Moving that uses the Pretty Lights track as the beat. Another big one in 2006 was Justice's track We Are Your Friends, which is actually a remix of Simeon's track Never Be Alone. The We Are Your Friends vocal was sampled in a ton of EDM tracks around 2010 to 2015, and there was even a movie named after the track. The next year in 2007, Justice made waves again with their debut self-titled album, which was also one of my earlier influences. I remember that the track Dance got used like crazy during the NCAA basketball tournament somewhere around that time, since the tournament is nicknamed the Big Dance. Also, another fun little Easter egg about that album is that Phantom Part 2 was sampled by Swizz Beatz for Gucci Mane's track Gucci Time.
It's Gucci time. Big Gucci trap boys call me Big Gucci. Timepiece, got the
Bringing it back to Pretty Lights, in 2008, he dropped the album Filling Up the City Skies, which has the tracks Hot Like Sauce and More Important Than Michael Jordan, which are probably two of the most iconic Pretty Lights tracks of all time. Also in 2008 was I Remember by Deadmau5 and Cascade. I'm personally not the biggest fan of this track, but it was huge and you definitely can't deny the impact that it had. The next year in 2009, Deadmau5 released his album For Lack of a Better Name, which of course has Ghosts and Stuff and Strobe, his two most iconic songs of all time. The new wave of dubstep started to break into the mainstream in 2009 when Mount Eden released Sierra Leone, and this song was also used on that Chris Webby Underclassmen mixtape that I mentioned earlier. Calvin Harris was leaning more into the dance side of things with his 2009 track You Used to Hold Me, which was indicative of what was to come with the Calvin Harris project. Also, Calvin Harris isn't actually his real name. I just figured that I would throw that in here. His name is actually Adam Wiles, which you guys probably know, but I figured I'd throw it in case anyone doesn't. David Guetta released his One Love album in 2009, which was a fundamental piece of the puzzle when it came to dance music getting popular in the US. It features collabs from mainstream artists, but with 4-on-the-floor house beats. The two biggest tracks on this album were Sexy Bitch with Akon and Memories with Kid Cudi.
all the crazy shit I did tonight. Those will be the best memories.
I have a cool story about this one too, because I actually discovered David Guetta through Lil Wayne's No Ceilings mixtape because he has an interlude on it that is just the beat from Sexy Bitch but with no vocals. So that brings us to 2010, which was the most important year for the development of the American dubstep scene because Skrillex released his Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites EP.
Oh my god!
I really can't even begin to explain just how much of a cultural shift this body of work created. Like, Skrillex was everywhere back then, and it doesn't even totally make sense because you wouldn't expect this EP to have the widespread appeal that it actually did. I mean, obviously fans of electronic music loved it, and that's to be expected, but it also earned Skrillex a ton of new fans who had never listened to electronic music before. But to be fair, a lot of people did hate it as well, and dubstep definitely got joked on a lot in the early 2010s, with people saying stuff like it sounds like a blender. In hindsight, these tracks were pretty rough around the edges, but it has been so cool to see the quality of dubstep and bass music as a whole just get better and better over the years. Another huge track from 2010 was Lights by Ellie Goulding, which got pretty big in the mainstream, and this song was also a key player in ushering in the dance music era. Keeping in line with the American dubstep boom, we've got to talk about the Excision and Downlink track Existence VIP from 2011. I honestly don't really know for sure how big this song actually was, but it seemed like everyone at my school knew about it at the time, and the general theme of the song is super memorable.
Power up the bass cannon.
And let's mention one more track from 2011, which is probably the biggest one from that year, Levels by Avicii. This was one of Avicii's breakout tracks, and it was literally everywhere, and even got a classic remix from Skrillex. Moving into 2012, when dance music was really going full-blown mainstream, Zedd had a breakout radio hit with Clarity. Porter Robinson helped make this track, but he didn't want public credit because he felt like it wasn't in line with his brand at the time, but he still does make royalties from it. This track was all over the radio, and I honestly kinda hated it at the time, but I can appreciate it now. I had just become pretty used to Zedd's glitchy electro style, so when he switched up to a little bit more of a pop sound, it just threw me for a loop. Another huge radio hit that year was Don't You Worry Child by Swedish House Mafia. And lastly, in 2012, Calvin Harris released his album 18 Months, which got a ton of radio play, featuring tracks like I Need Your Love with Ellie Goulding, Feel So Close, and We Found Love with Rihanna.